Hi, my name is Stevie Lynn, and I'm so blessed to live with my husband Michael and our sweet dogs in a log cabin in the woods of North Carolina. It is truly a magical place that inspires me to live close to the land, tuned to the rhythms of the season, and connected to the local community. I am resolved to live more creatively, sustainably, and to be more honest and intentional about my choices. So in light of these goals, I am on a journey to cut out processed foods and learn how to make most things from scratch. Everything from bread to beer to booch to soap. And I invite you to come along. I am really looking forward to the mental freedom that comes from creating one's own life. So I'm making one of my favorite things and I thought I would share it with you. So I'm just kind of doing a little pop-up video. I am making green chili stew, but I'm making it vegetarian. I'm using some chickpeas instead of chicken. So when I used to live in New Mexico, I would make it with shredded chicken, but I'm using chickpeas. Chickpeas break down and they can actually thicken a stew. This also means that we don't need to make a roux, so it's even healthier. So I've got a whole onion, 3 garlic cloves, 2 carrots, about 2 teaspoons of cumin, and you can leave this out, it just depends. Like in a real authentic New Mexican stew, they'd probably leave the cumin out. But I like the cumin. And if you add the cumin, it's a little bit more Tex-Mex. But it's not Tex-Mex because when you make a green chili stew, it's the green chili is like the vegetable in it. It's not the seasoning. So in Texas cooking, the chilies are like the seasoning aspect of it. Like you would have a bunch of tomatoes with a little bit of chili. But in New Mexico, it's all chili. We're doing all chili. We're not gonna put any tomatoes in it. So, okay, so we have about 2 teaspoons of oregano. And I took these are little Yukon Gold and purple potatoes and rose potatoes or like red potatoes. They're little mini ones that I cut in half. Some of them I quartered to make them all about the same size. But you can use like a full-size Yukon Gold or rose potato or like a red potato. I don't totally recommend russets because they break down easily. But if that is your jam, use the russet because sometimes we like the kind of potato-y soup thingy. And then I'm using also Better Than Bouillon. I'm actually using chicken bouillon, so this isn't totally vegetarian, but feel free to use a vegetarian bouillon. The star of the show is this. It's really, really hard to get fresh green chili year-round for sure because it's only harvested in late summer in New Mexico, and a lot of New Mexicans, people like me, would get tons and tons and tons of green chili, roast it ourselves and then freeze it, put it in the freezer. So our whole, like half of our freezer would be dedicated to green chili. When you don't live in New Mexico, it's hard to get your hands on it. And it's expensive, even when it's in season. Hatch is sending green chili out to other states now and it's easier to get, but it's still expensive. It's kind of crazy. But luckily, this is available in the store. Well, at least this is available in my store, in the co-op in North Carolina. And I've seen it at other grocery stores. If you don't have this, you can use poblanos. They're not gonna be as hot, but you're still gonna get a good stew. And this is about 16 ounces. So you would need a couple cups of chopped poblanos if you were to substitute it. Okay, so let's start cooking. So, I'm not a big fan of the citric acid preservative thing. So we remove it. Cumin, carrots, oregano, bouillon, and potatoes. And you can leave out the cumin if you want to be more authentic, You can add tomatoes too, if that floats your boat. So in order to get chickpeas that have a nice texture, where they're crunchy on the outside and soft on the inside, we have to use a lot of olive oil. And then we add our onions and saute it for about a minute, and then add cumin. And we season it. We add our chickpeas, and then our carrots. And our garlic, and then our oregano. And we're actually going to just let it sit for a while and get a little crunchy on the bottom. I needed to add a little bit more olive oil because I didn't want the chickpeas to burn, but I'm actually going to leave it like this for about 6 minutes. Now they're good. So I add water, probably leaving about 2 inches above the chickpeas. Then I add my potatoes. You might need to add more water. Usually I keep a bag of veggie scraps in the freezer, which I simmer in order to make broth, but I don't have it right now, so I'm using bouillon. I'm having troubles with my tripod. It won't stay straight up. So now we are just going to let this stew, because it's a stew, and I don't know, there's potatoes in it, so they'll be done in about 20 minutes. So as soon as the potatoes are done, your stew is done. And I actually like to make this either a day before or several hours before, so it can kind of stews together, so that the chickpeas and the potatoes absorb all the flavors. Yeah, that's why things are better the next day, because the potatoes and all the vegetables and everything get to absorb all the flavors. If we have it in 20 minutes, it's going to be like a flavorful broth, but the potatoes and the chickpeas will be kind of bland. Okay, my neck hurts now. And let it simmer for a while. And let it simmer for a while. We're gonna let it simmer for a while. There's a singer inside of me, but she's being tortured to death. I have serious problems with my tripod. It's like a ball and socket thing, but it's kind of loose somehow, and it just kind of falls down all the time. And my husband told me to try talcum powder, and I don't have talcum powder because I just don't. I mean, who uses talcum powder anymore? I have dry shampoo, so I've been using dry shampoo, but it's not really working. Check the stew, and I want to go outside and go hula hooping. It's already thickened up some. So it's been, I don't know, maybe like 10 minutes. I have really no concept of time when it comes to cooking. The only time that I really pay attention is when I'm actually developing a recipe to write down. Otherwise, I go by sight and touch. So I said about 20 minutes for the potatoes to be done, but they're already they're getting close to done. They're soft. I can smash them and I'm doing that. I'm smashing some chickpeas and some potatoes because I want it to thicken up. Because we don't have a roux in this, so we are relying on the starch of our vegetables. I'm just gonna leave the lid off of it for a little bit and just let it thicken. I put a little bit too much bouillon in it, which made it a little salty for my taste, although it's probably good for most. But I'm not worried about that because the potatoes, the carrots, and the chickpeas are going to absorb. They're gonna marinate in that salt. And they're going to leach the salt from the broth. So the broth is not going to be as salty tomorrow or in a couple of hours. Turn it off because I don't want these little potatoes to lose their shape. Yes, I'm smashing some of them against the wall, but I also want there to be fully intact potatoes and chickpeas in here. And we're just gonna let it down before we put it in the fridge. After letting it simmer for about 10 minutes, it still wasn't quite as thick as I like it. So I made a slurry with about a tablespoon of potato starch and some water, and then I put it in the stew and I let it simmer for about a minute until there's no starch flavor and it achieves this level of thickness, which is perfect. I am truly astonished by how good this tastes, how traditional it tastes. I can't believe that these green chilies came out of a jar. It is so good. So this means that you don't have to be in New Mexico to get that traditional flavor. You can have it in your own home.